Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dream Data.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dream Data employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Attributed Podcast hosted by Dream Data. You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Today, we're here with John Jantz, founder of Duct Tape Marketing, and we're going to talk about rethinking the B2B customer journey, AI, loyalty, and the post-sale reality. So, hi, John. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks
I
for
thought
having me.
maybe you could. Thank you. I thought that maybe you could start by introducing yourself as well as Duct Tape Marketing.
You bet. So, as she said, I'm John Jantz. I founded Duct Tape Marketing about 30 years ago, actually, and we started as kind of a traditional agency, and really over the years have evolved to creating our own framework, our own methodology, and that's really what Duct Tape Marketing is. It's kind of the name of our approach to creating marketing strategies. So, we now work with clients, helping them build their marketing strategy, helping them implement that marketing strategy, and still in kind of a traditional agency fashion. But our approach to marketing was something I wrote about in my first book, Duct Tape Marketing, is something that we also then license to other agencies. We have about 500 agencies around the world that have gone through our licensing program and now use our methodology to create strategy before tactics.
I would love to get more into that methodology, especially because there's a really famous one. But before that, I'm just wondering, what do you see as the most fundamental flaw in how B2B companies still sort of define, measure, and approach the customer journey?
Well, I think the number one thing that we see is thinking that it ends when somebody buys, when somebody says yes. It's like, okay, marketing's done. We did our job. That's how we're measured. And so I think, to me, the real opportunity, and we're going to talk about something that we created called the marketing hourglass, and it kind of borrows from that idea of the funnel shape, right? You got some amount of people up here, and you squeeze a small amount of them through the funnel. That's still taught today, as a marketing practice. But I think where a lot of people stop is right there. And so what our idea with this hourglass is the bottom shape now is where the real, it spreads back out again. That's, to me, where the real opportunity for momentum is. And that I think marketing needs to be involved in creating the customer experience, in onboarding, in retention, in nurturing, in creating, champions inside the company, and doing it intentionally. Not, a lot of companies, I think, just think, oh, if we do a good job, if we do what we said we did, we're going to do, they'll come back, they'll tell their friends. And frankly, that's where I think there's a lot of missed opportunity, because it's kind of left to accidental practice. And so, again, thinking about the two phases, if you will, of the customer journey being before they become a customer and after they become a customer, is having equal weight. Or frankly, in some businesses, if you put more weight on that back half of the hourglass or of the customer journey, that's where you'd really build momentum. I mean, we all know how much easier it is to get more business out of somebody that already trusts you than it is to go, find somebody and convince them to trust you.
Would you say, because you said that you find that this is still being taught, have you seen any change at all on how B2B companies are approaching the customer journey, or is it just the same and you have tons of potential customers you can educate?
Well, I think we'll never run out of customers that we can educate. But there's no question more companies are waking up, largely because they have to. The buyer is now in control a lot more than they were. It used to be that once they filled out that form on our website, then sales took over, and that was the whole process, and the buyer didn't really have a lot of. I mean, they had to get the information from that salesperson, right? Well, now, as you know, increasingly, they can know more about the company than the salesperson can. When it comes time to actually start thinking about contacting. I mean, they're not filling out that form and saying, okay, contact me. They are doing all their research, and maybe in large part way down the journey before we ever even know that they exist. And so I think that dynamic has really made companies have to wake up and say, not only do we have to be all these places where they're doing their research, we have to actually personalize the journey to them because they can they no longer want generic information. They no longer want just the same thing that we send to everybody. They want and demand now something that is much more personalized, and I think that's made organizations more deeply integrate sales and marketing. Let's hope more more deeply integrate sales and service, as one kind of continuum rather than pass offs that traditionally happened.
Oh, absolutely. I think that also very much goes hand in hand with some of the data that we're seeing. We released this benchmarks report early last year, or sorry, this year, where we found that the customer journey actually has grown on average. It's 211 days now. And of those days, 62 are on the sales pipeline. So to put it in other terms, 70% of that journey happens before someone speaks to a salesperson. So 100% we're seeing that that's growing
Yeah.
even more and more. You did a great
Well, and of course we haven't mentioned AI yet. We might as well get that cat out of the bag. AI is making that even worse, I think, or accelerating that because the research is so deep. The available research is so deep now, and when somebody turns to AI and it says, "Here are my 3 recommendations," and here's why, all of a sudden the short list gets shorter faster. And so I think that we will probably talk about where AI fits in the journey, but I think that's
oh,
accelerating that
100%.
that buyer behavior.
Yeah, we're 100% going to touch upon AI. I know that everyone's waiting for us to talk about it, but I just wanted to go back to what you said a bit earlier. Um, First of all, great job introducing the marketing hourglass model. I think you have a lot of practice on that. But you also said that we need to be looking at what happens post sales, but also in sort of like an
Right.
organized and
Right.
systematic way. Where do you see that B2B organizations succeeding that and approaching that systematically and not just through vibes, I guess? And where do they fail in creating
Yeah.
that system?
Well, I think the biggest thing, it just comes down to post sale assets. I mean, creating things that teach people how to use what they bought better. Shows them the ways that they can do more with it. Starts exploring other areas that somebody might buy more product or more service from us. So I think what happens is a lot of companies leave that strictly to sales, or they leave it happens in service sort of accidentally, or in fulfillment, or whatever the word is for your organization. And I think marketing actually should play a role in saying, okay, here is the campaign that we're going to run after somebody buys this thing. Here is the campaign we're going to run to get them on a subscription now. Here is the campaign we're going to run to help them introduce us to other people like them. And I think in a lot of organizations those things do happen, but they're sort of organic as opposed to intentional.
Yeah. And what happens when it's not intentional?
Well, if you do good work, you're going to get referrals. You're going to keep your customers if so that's why I think a lot of times people don't invest in that, because they're like, well, yeah, 60% of our business comes by word of mouth, but it's all sort of accidental. And what I like to suggest is that if that's true, then you really have an opportunity to amplify that, because there's a whole lot of people that you just never ask, and so you look up and you go, oh, we haven't gotten an order from so and so for a couple of years now. I wonder why. And turns out that person moved on and went somewhere else. So that's what I think happens is you lose customers and you lose opportunities for referrals, because you're not intentionally focused on this.
Yeah, and maybe it's also just as, I guess, a learner of you as well. When you're not intentional about it and something goes wrong, then you don't know what went wrong because you don't know what was going right either.
Yeah, 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 and that's really a great point. I mean, every really good salesperson knows that if they, if they're not talking to their customers every, let's arbitrarily say 60 days, not necessarily to sell them something, but just to continue the relationship. And I think that that's true of every business is that it's a relationship, more than a customer. And so what are you doing to continue to nurture that
Great point.
relationship?
I forgot to say, John and I had a little conversation, and we would like to take questions as they come. So we actually do have a little question here that I think it reads, how do we sync teams around this? Product marketing, content, customer success, marketing.
Yeah. Well, I think the key word is intentional sync around it. What the stages of the hourglass for us are know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. And those stages sort of naturally, know, like, and trust really is marketing's job. Try and buy is sales. Repeat or retain and refer, a lot of times falls into, customer success. And so just actually thinking about those now as a one whole journey as opposed to siloed, things is the first mindset shift. And what we've had a lot of luck doing, again, a lot of organizations are very large and departmentalized, and it's harder to do. But we've had a lot of luck just making sure that leadership actually gets together. And I know this sounds totally simplistic, but gets together and says, when this happens, what do you do next? When somebody fills out a form and it comes in, what does sales do? What is their act? Just literally going through, because I've worked with a lot of organizations where I'll put those people in the same room and they actually don't know what happens next. They sign a contract. I don't really know what happens after that. And everybody should know what all of those steps are, because what you typically find is, we thought you were doing this, and there are gaps everywhere. And so that to me is the first, is to map this out as one big success engine, if you will, and just find out what are all the steps and stages and how do they all work together and where are the gaps.
When you join an organization, it's obviously different for you. You come in as a consultant, like you're there to, I don't want to say ruffle some feathers, but you're there with a purpose. That's why you've been brought in. But I guess when you work for
Yep.
an organization, sometimes we also assume like, oh, my boss knows, like they know, or like you're like, of course,
Right.
customer success does that because it's customer success. Like, why wouldn't they do that? And you just assume a lot of things unless you just sit down and you're like, let's take business 101.
Yeah,
What
and
are
I
we
know
doing here?
I'm almost certain your person that asked that question is saying, no, my boss does not know. Don't want to throw you under the bus there, but that's my guess.
Hey, my boss knows. He's very intelligent. Okay, the moment we have all been waiting for. Drum roll, please. AI. The first AI question, because we've been talking a lot about it here internally. Dream Data, actually, shout out to our CEO, Nick Turner. He talked about how, because we are for the B2B marketer, and he talked about how marketers are the masters of automation. And we've been automating everything under the sun for millennia. And now we've gotten a new tool, or I guess set of tools, AI.
Yep.
But I was just wondering, what is one part of the B2B customer journey, buying experience that you think we should never automate, or at least not for now?
Let me back up because I have a little different take on that. I think people are using AI to automate too much. And it is a great tool, but that's just all we're doing is we're just taking tactics and putting them in another box. What I think the best use of AI is to actually segment and anticipate rather than automate. And what I mean by that is you can have an automation process that AI can be involved in, say, onboarding a new customer. But where people, I think, drop the ball, or I should say, limit what's possible on that, is that they just create a one size fits all. Still, it's like, yeah, but it's faster now. And what it can be is, okay, this person's onboarding is going to be personalized completely to them. The stories they need to hear, the case studies they need to see, the examples they need to be led by, AI can automate all of that, but by personalizing it and anticipating what that person, that one person, is going to need to hear in the onboarding, that is going to be different than every single other person. And I think that's the place where, again, after somebody, post purchase buy, that's the place where you use automation to remove friction, but then you use AI to really anticipate what they're going to need and to personalize.
It's interesting that while you were mentioning, especially post purchase, I thought about something. So I was actually writing a recipe for Dream Data, pretty much how to measure the influence of like LLM chatbots into like pipeline and revenue. It's very simple. It was very simple to write. And as I was doing it, I decided to check out our own data and be like, oh, how's it going for us? And I noticed this is a little bit of a story. I noticed that when I looked into sort of later pipeline stages like closed one revenue, the URLs, like the content that was being surfaced by LLMs was actually our
Right.
help documentation,
Mhm.
like our help doc. And I was like, who in the world is using ChatGPT for help docs? And I guess that showed my age because I talked to some of my younger interns and they were like, we have a help documentation. And they don't like even the tools that we use to create, for example, interactive demos, like they don't go into the documentation at all.
Yeah.
They ask ChatGPT, like, I want to do this with X tool. How do I do that?
Yeah.
Which I found fascinating. And that was like a finding where I was like, okay, we really like our help documentation needs to be crystal clear because we don't control ChatGPT and how it's going to like frame how to add filters in Dream Data. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? How
Well, yeah, and what it will also do though is because there's a bunch of your customers are out there writing documentation for their employees that are public, and so it's bringing in all of that too. So but what you really pointed to is that's how search behavior is changing. Once people get used to the fact that they can type in, 200-word sentence about something very specific that they're trying to find out, that's very difficult to optimize for.
Yeah, 100%. But I just wondered like that post sales. So what does that mean for I'm also thinking of maybe like smaller teams. Like does that mean that the documentation has to be under marketing, for example, when we think about owning the journey together?
Yeah, I would say yes. It doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, you have to almost optimize for all kinds of behaviors. There's definitely people that are going to want to go through the tutorials, before they ever touch a keyboard. They're going to watch all the tutorials, right? But then you're also people like me that are going to go, I want to do this one thing. How do you do that? And they're going to search. And so you've probably even heard people in marketing talk about answer engine optimization, as a branch or a form of SEO. And I think that writing content, whether it's a blog post or some sort of marketing white paper that answers questions or that really focuses on answering questions, is really going to be an approach that content providers, content marketers need to embrace fully. Because so whether or not it's your how-to documentation or it's just all the questions that every salesperson has ever been asked, because you can now record that data and dump it into AI and come up with, like, here are the 17 questions that every salesperson has been asked in the last year. We better create content that addresses those.
Oh, 100%. I wonder again in this like AI world you talked about. I just really want to focus on like the
Sure.
post purchase because I also agree that that is an area that is still somehow unexplored, for a lack of a better word. And you talked about this like hyper personalization that I would argue, have been trying to do for a really
Yeah.
long time. I think all of us still get the hi first name emails because someone forgot to plot in the right
Yeah.
tag. Where do we see an opportunity for maybe actually get to that hyper personalization that we've been trying to get to before?
Well, particularly when you're providing service. So after like the repeat, you get repeat sales because people are happy, right? So you're providing service, they have an issue, you solve it, so you're interacting with the customer, hopefully, as part of fulfillment in a lot of cases. So starting to track and capture the data. If they submit tickets, in your world, if they, have sale, they call into a help desk, in your world, whatever it is. Well, those are data points now that can actually trigger, oh, they need this case study. Um, and so that kind of, repeat world to basically, again, saying, okay, this is what's going on in that client's world, in our engagement in that client's world. How do we use AI and automation to then personalize what they need to hear more of from us? That's one, quick example. But even
Sure,
just,
good example.
but just check-ins, exclusive content, for them that reminds them, why they chose you. I mean, just there's so many things that because you can automate it, but it doesn't have to feel automated if
Yeah.
you are actually then using the data that you have to personalize it.
And maybe not everything has to be hyper personalized, right? Like not every single email or newsletter that you send has to be hyper personalized, but maybe yeah, when you log into the
Yeah.
platform or once in a while you'll get an email that is about something that you were searching or asking a chatbot or whatever it may be.
Well, and why not personalize it? You can.
I
That's
mean,
fine.
if you can, you should. I agree.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you use the thing to log in as an example. So your particular platform, you could, and you probably do have some automations around this, but you could actually track what they're doing when they log in and say, oh, you know what? They're not using these 10 features. They'll probably stick around longer if we can get them hooked on these 10 features. Let's make sure that we are now sending them information about, these 10 features. And that's not even AI, frankly. I mean, that we've had that kind of automation for a long time. It's just scoring. But I think there's a lot of things that you could now enhance with AI, based on a set of rules, for how somebody uses the product.
But I think now you're touching onto something like, as you said, there's been technologies here that have allowed us to do these personalizations in the past, and yet, and like AI is just a new one. I'm not trying to sort of talk down about the power that it brings us,
Yeah.
but it is just a new one. That being said, you still talk about like there are tons of companies out there that are still catching up. What is the gap there?
Data. I mean, it really is. The real gap is they don't have access to the right data. I mean, you can't personalize if you haven't segmented your CRM, for example. Like you just have a whole mismatch of people, and they all get the same newsletter because you don't know who they are. And so, if you don't have some ability, if you haven't been segmenting, that basic example, your email list is not segmented by product or client or problem or whatever it is, but then it's going to be very hard for you to personalize. Now, you can start today and make some assumptions about who people are. You can also, most of the ESPs and the CRMs now allow for tagging based on activity. If somebody visits this page, well, they must be this type of customer. So you can start doing that, but again, that's been our experience, is that what makes using some of the personalization and some of the even automation difficult for people is they don't have access to the right data.
What's your favorite AI thing to do?
To argue with it, quite frankly. And I'm being sort of serious about that. One of the flaws that I see with many of the LLMs is that they have to give you an answer if you ask them a question. Doesn't matter if it's right or not. I've never gotten one to say, I'll get back to you on that. I mean, they're going to regurgitate something, right? And then the other thing they tend to have a bias towards is pleasing. It's like, oh, if I ask them a question, then, oh, that's a brilliant idea, John. Here's how you should do that. And so one of my favorite things to do is to say, why is that a brilliant idea? Tell me why you think that's a brilliant idea.
Tell
Um,
me why I'm a genius.
um, but really being serious, I like to push it and question it, because I quite often I will get a much better answer if it then says, well, here's actually the cons in that idea, as well, or just like, give me an example of 3 companies that have done that, idea. And, just really kind of don't let it just give you answers, but, treat it like you would somebody, like a consultant. And say, well, prove that to me, that statement that you just made. And I think that a lot of people really miss that step, because they're just so anxious to get the output.
Again, we can always bring it back to AI. If anyone has AI questions, please do leave them. If you want to say anything about AI, John, please do. I just want to kind of talk a little bit more about the post-sales stage, for a lack of a better word.
Sure.
You talked about, okay, now you have the customer.
Okay.
Let's make them into like a long-term buyer, and also that it's easier to get people to buy when they're already buying from you. It's a bit of a repeat question, but what have you seen works to make this into like a systematic
That's right.
approach and not just an organic one?
Well, I think one of the biggest things systematically is, starts just with thinking about continuing the relationship. And I know every business has different, like some salesperson might have 2,000 customers, somebody might have 5 customers, and the sales cycle might be 3 years for somebody and 3 weeks for somebody. So obviously it's different for everybody, what the metrics or what the rhythm would be. But the number one thing that you can do is have a very consistent way to say, we are going to contact this prospect or this customer in this fashion every X amount of weeks or every X amount of months or something. And that, you can also have education that's going on in the background as well. But just that simple step of checking in. And again, in a smaller environment, it might just be, hey, I saw this article that talked about X, and I thought you'd think it was interesting. We're not trying to sell anything. We're just basically letting somebody know we're thinking of you. We care. And that's the beauty of some of the AI and the automation is it should be freeing us up to do more of that human contact. And in fact, that's really what, when we're working with organizations, we're trying to help them, instead of say, look, AI is going to let your people do so much more now with the time that they've already got, is we're saying, no, where can we actually remove friction using AI, provide a better experience, let people do self-trials, all the kind of stuff that AI really allows them to do, so that the human beings can actually build and trust and build the relationship.
In terms of building this, like, yes, these check-ins, and like you said, there could also be education around it. Would you say that building sort of this loyalty factor, is that a blend of the entire marketing hourglass, or is the money-making machine really in the post-sales aspect?
Well, that's an interesting question, because yes, if you measure, the money making, the momentum is really in post sales, but the trust stage, before the buy, is probably the most important. The level at which they trust you is going to correlate to the level of premium pricing that you can charge. Right? We've all paid more. I mean, I saw a recent B2B buyers survey, 2,000 B2B buyers, 86% said they'd pay more for a better experience. They'd pay more for something that they believed in. That's why referrals are so powerful, right? It's like, hey, I can talk to somebody who I know, and they can assure me that they had a good experience, or that it worked the way they said it was going to work. I'm in. I don't care if it's more money. I've got that assurance. I've got that trust level. So a lot of times people think referrals happen kind of after, everybody's been happy. Everybody, you go back and ask them. But a lot of it actually happens at the level of trust that they have when they make the purchase, the experience they had with a sales person, the onboarding. I mean, all of those things are actually where referrals either live or die. you do have to do what you promised. But if the experience of getting there was kind of yucky, you're not going to get referrals. So it really, it really starts much earlier than people assume. And I think, again, that element of everything you can do to build trust and to prove that you do what you say you do is really where it's really where the profit is, and it's certainly where repeat business is.
Yeah, I guess in the sales process, you can do a lot to probably regain that trust, but it is harder to get someone to refer to you if that beginning stage was a bit rocky than if it was great.
Yep.
And because they're also, I guess, more willing to forgive if maybe the post sales is not like super smooth than they expected. I would assume, just speaking from like personal experience.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You certainly can recover, and I've had experiences where, hey, I really needed this, and I've already made my decision to buy. I didn't really like the sales process, but I've already, it's going to solve my problem, so I'm going to do it. And then my expectations were exceeded, after that, and so it certainly can happen, but it's much people. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but people will talk about a great experience no matter where it happens in the process, right? Like that first sales call I had was so educational. They really cared about what I wanted. Yeah, they'll talk about that. And so referrals can happen right at that point.
Absolutely. In terms of building that trust, now we're going pre-sales. I'm just jumping
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
the stages. Um, in terms of building that trust, I think we have like a more of an understanding on how when I say we, I mean marketers. We have a better understanding on how to
Yeah.
build that system and have like that education, that nurturing, all of that the customer not only needs, I would actually argue expects today before talking to a salesperson. Where are you still seeing some pitfalls in that process? And I'm assuming the no like trust, yeah.
In the trust building. Yeah. So yeah. So the traditional things, reviews, testimonials, case studies, white papers, email nurture series. These are all ways that traditionally companies have built trust. Um, a lot of people are trying to automate some of that, and we've all had the chatbot experience, the AI chatbot experience that basically becomes a merry-go-round, and you can't get off. And that's one way that people are really dropping the ball. Trust is a hard thing to automate, and having said that, there are definitely things that can be done to build trust. One of the fastest ways to build trust is personalization. So using AI, when I come there and I say, well, here's who I am, or here's what I do in a chatbot, for example, experience, and personalizing that experience, knowing who that is. I mean, have you ever called a company, somebody you've done business with, they want to come out and service your boiler again this year, and as soon as you pick up the phone, they know who you are because your number's in their thing. They pull up the data. They know when they've been there last time. Those are ways where automation and technology is actually building trust. Because I hate it when it feels like somebody's got to find a pen so they can write my number down. And so I just think that it's this proper blending of automation and AI with kind of human insight and human behavior and human nature in mind, is how you continue to build trust. Because there are tools now that can calculators and things like that, where you could actually do some sort of predictive analysis of what a result might be for me if I use this product or this tool. I mean, those are great examples of building trust that's personalized completely using a tool. We have a lot of clients that we're now putting pricing calculators on their site. One of the things that has changed about buying behavior is people want to go all the way up to the decision-making point almost before they want to talk to anybody. None of us wants a sales call. I'm sorry, salespeople listening. It's hard. It's real. You've probably experienced, right? And so actually making it to the point where somebody can kind of have an idea, what's this going to cost me, is a trust building element today that a lot of companies are resisting because it's like, oh, we don't want to give away the pricing. They'll just go shop it around somewhere else. But it's a reality of how people are buying today.
And it's also a reality of how people buy, period. I guess before it
Yeah.
wasn't available to the B2B buyer, but now it is. And if you don't give me that price, then I am going to the one that is available. Because I have never, if I had to go and buy headphones tomorrow and I had to speak, not even to several, just to one salesperson to know the price, I'm probably leaving and going to another store.
Because you can, very easily. But another example online is software. A lot of times, you know, the only way to get the pricing is to fill out this form and and have somebody sell it to. Well, we just we want to know at least what it's kind of going to be, right? Before we want to do that, because none of us wants to waste. Well, first off, we don't really want the bad experience that maybe we've had in a sales environment, but we also don't want to waste our time. If I've got $1,000 to spend on this and I come to find out it's $10,000, I'm just like, well, we just wasted my time,
Yeah.
for that. Just give me that so I can move on or understand what's realistic. And I get the psychology. I mean, a lot of companies, are like, no, if we can get the person on the phone, we can help them actually understand the value of this price, as opposed to them just looking at it and saying, oh, that's too expensive. And so I get the the science behind that, but it's just the reality is people want to go almost up to the point of buying, before they really even contact us.
And I totally get why, especially at least for us in software, right? A lot of these touch points are digital, right? We're not, because I do think that sales, at least good salespeople, play a valuable role. You also said like they are the ones that are responsible for try and buy, right? So they play a valuable role in tapping on that trust and
Yeah.
education that should have already been done. And like really, I don't want to say the word capitalize because it has bad connotations, but really sort of building on that work that has already been done, right? But when you don't have a person, when everything is digital, and I want to a little bit go back to the trust thing that you were talking about and how we can automate and personalize. But you also mentioned the chat bots that you just want to throw the computer away and be like, you know what? I actually don't have a problem
Yeah.
anymore. I don't need to buy anything. Keep it. I'm okay. I'm actually good. So, how do we build trust when there's also so much spam out there? How do you tell your buyers that
Yeah.
I actually know what I'm doing? Like, I'm not this crazy spam
Yeah.
chatbot from hell.
Yeah. It's going to sound like a broken record, but this is where personalization really shines too. I mean, I I I have a podcast, and I've been doing it for 20 years. So we fortunately have a large following, and so what that means is I get about 10 pitches a day for people that want to be on our podcast. And I will tell you that I can tell when one is authentic and when one is completely automated, completely spammy. They took about 2 seconds to identify one of my show episodes and say, I really love this, this is amazing. I mean, it's so obvious now that it's pretty easy to stand out by being authentic and by being personal. You need to think in terms of, as hard as this is to say in the conversation about automation, you need to think in terms of what are some things that won't scale. We need to be doing those because it's increasingly obvious to our buyer or our prospect that this was not AI spam.
Yeah. I had this really interesting conversation with one of my colleagues a couple of weeks ago where we were talking. We hosted this event called the Future of Revenue Marketing. So then we started talking about the future of revenue marketing. And of course, AI joined the conversation very early on. And he said something that has really stayed with me where he was like, there is nothing wrong with automation and hyper personalization and AI, but people don't like to feel tricked. So the second
Yeah.
you send an email or a message that has obviously been written by ChatGPT, but you say like all the best and your name, then people don't want to listen to you anymore because you have to trick them. And he was like, I wonder if
Yeah.
in the future we should just write best, like Andrea, with help from ChatGPT, just to call it out what it is, because
Yeah.
people know. And maybe it will make it not so bad. And I thought that was like an interesting perspective to be like, why do we hate it so much? Yes, because you are lying to me, because you think I can see
Yeah.
through this. Right?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we're going to go through. We're in this period now where people are actually walking this line of like, I don't want people to know AI did this, right? A little bit, and I think we're going to go to the point where it's like plumbing. Everybody's doing it, right? I mean, it's just gonna nobody's going to really ask anymore. It's not like YouTube. You have to actually, disclaim on YouTube videos if AI, played a part in it, or at least you're supposed to. And I think we're going to get past that period. But I had an interesting experience. I was working with a client, and they had gotten some graphic design, some logo ideas. Frankly, is what it was. And they really liked them. I mean, they thought they were great, and they were really honing in on one. And then they found out that they were AI generated, and all of a sudden they're like, "No, we can't use these." And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. If they resonated with you, and why are they less valuable now?" And the response, I think, speaks a great deal to how people think, and really the kind of the balancing act that we have to really play right now is they say, well, it just took the humanness out of it for us. And I think that's something that we'll see where we end up with, but I think that's something where we are right now, where people still want that human connection. They want that, that relationship, and they don't want AI to completely take that.
Yeah. And I get it. And I think we can find a way, as long as we, as you said, keep those check-ins, keep being customer
Yeah,
centric, keep
yeah,
making sure that we talk to each other. Because also ourselves, like, I completely fine talking to a chatbot, as long as, like,
yeah.
if they can't give me answers. Yeah,
As
and
long as it works, yeah.
answers to complicated questions, if they can just write like, sorry, girl, gotta talk to a hurt person tomorrow, opening hours are 9 to 5. Then I'm like, cool, we
Yeah,
tried, right? But
yeah.
good.
And I will say, I have
Me
had
too.
some great experiences with chatbots. So they are trainable. I mean, I think it just has to be done the right way. Because then I tell you, the ones that are the worst are the ones that are doing it so they don't have to talk to people. The
Took
airlines,
the words
for
out of my
example, the
mouth.
rental car companies, for example. And so they're not training that thing to give you answers. They're training that thing so that they don't have to talk to you.
And everyone can see through that. Uh, okay, we have to be wrapping up soon. If you didn't ask your question, I'm really sorry, because I'm going to get the last question. First of all, thank you so much for joining us.
Of
Where
course.
can our audience learn more about Marketing Hourglass Model and your work with duct tape marketing?
Sure. So, well, everything I've been doing for the last couple decades can be found at ducttapemarketing.com. That's DUCTTAPE marketing.com. And again, I mentioned that we work as an agency. This is some of the work that we do with clients, but we also license our methodology, and really kind of both of those options are available at ducttapemarketing.com. You can find out a lot more about both of those.
That was beautiful. I want to say thank you so much to John for joining us. Bye.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.